Greetings everyone. I am Omkaar Pattanayak, the founder and president of the Global Federal League. Today we have with us a very special guest. David Gallup is an attorney who specializes in human rights, world citizenship, and world law education. He is the president and general counsel of the World Services Authority, Washington, D.C., a global public service human rights organization founded in 1954. He is also a board member of Citizens for Global Solutions, CGS team leader of the Peace and Youth Outreach Program, and the convener of the World Court of Human Rights Coalition. Gallup has been interviewed by media such as BBC, PRI, the New York Times, the Huffington Post, and Foreign Policy. He was interviewed for A Beautiful Mind by biographer Sylvia Nassar and for Cosmopolites, The Coming of the Global Citizen by Atossa Araxia Abrahamian, a senior editor at The Nation. I hope I have pronounced the names correctly.
Yes.
He received a JD in 1991 from the Washington College of Law, American University in Washington, D.C., and an AB in French and an AB in History from Washington University in St. Louis, MO, in 1988. He has taken coursework towards a MA in International Affairs at the School of International Service, American University, and has spent a year at Université de Caen in France. Was that correct?
Yes, that's very good. Excellent pronunciation, Omkar. Thank you.
I feel validated now. So I was looking forward to this interview, Mr. Gallup, and this is sort of a fanboy moment for me because I'm a great fan of Gary Davis and a great fan of the work your organization is doing. And to be able to interact with someone so highly placed in the organization and carrying forward the legacy, someone who has so closely worked with Mr. Davis, it's an honor.
Yeah, well, Omkar, it's an honor for me to be speaking with you tonight and with all your audience, also to talk about Gary Davis, to talk about the World Service Authority and the human rights work that we do, to talk about world citizenship. And I'm certainly also pleased and thank you for the article that you wrote on Gary Davis about him being a satyagrahi, an activist, a non-violent or peace-insistent activist.
So, David, firstly, how did you become a World Federalist, and has your perception of the idea changed since then?
Yes. Well, during law school, I was studying, when I got to choose the classes that I wanted to study, which is usually by the second or half of the second year and into the third year in law school, because the first year you're studying everything that they want you to study. Well, I took international human rights law classes, public international law, refugee law, asylum law, poverty law, immigration law, basically classes that would help me to know everyone's rights and how those rights play out in the law and in society. And I knew that I wanted to do something with my life that was a service to others, while helping them to understand their rights too. So one of my roles as a human rights lawyer is also a human rights educator and activist, to help people to know that they have rights, because if you don't know your rights, you can't claim them. Well, so after law school, when I was looking for work, I found the position of general counsel or a chief attorney position at World Service Authority. And that's really where I began to learn about world citizenship and about world federation. While I was studying for my graduate degree in international relations at American University, I had written a paper, and in that paper I had mentioned that I thought there should be some kind of united world organization and beyond the United Nations. And it's funny that the World Federalists, or now Citizens for Global Solutions in the United States, or the World Federalist Movement, or even the Global Federal League, all focus on world federation. But originally the name of the World Federalists back in 1947, when they first came together as a larger group, was the United World Federalists. And even World Service Authority's original name was United World Service Authority. Gary Davis said that he dropped the word united from World Service Authority because he realized actually the world is already united. What is not united is the people of the world who don't yet comprehend that we do have one world, one planet, that we are one human family. And that, of course, was the task of the rest of his adult life, and so far my adult life, to educate people that we are already world citizens, but we have to claim it. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're world federalists. And it took some time working at World Service Authority for me to really get a grasp on the idea of World Federation and what that meant. I mean, I understood federation when it came to what was going on in the United States, from the colonizers and how they created a constitution and a federation versus a confederation, which originally was separate states that would potentially fight each other until they created a common law beyond them. And then after learning from Gary Davis for many, many years, I worked with him for almost 25 years until he died, and I'm still running the organization that he founded. We would talk about this idea of a world federal government, democratic world federal government. And he had a really good friend, a man named Frank Bourne, who was a US State Department officer for many years, but then became the president of the Washington, D.C. branch of the World Federalist Association. And we would go to meetings there, and I learned more about it. But certainly my real foray into this idea of World Federation as it's linked to world citizenship has really been the last 5 years, as I've become also a board member of Citizens for Global Solutions, which is a national World Federalist organization here in the United States. And as you mentioned, I have several roles as a board member, a volunteer really, for that organization. So, I mean, for my role now, I feel like is to provide a link between World Federation and world citizenship, because the idea of world citizenship, I mean, when you ask about how this changed, my view changed over time. Well, everybody kind of understands what it means to be a world citizen. That means you have rights and duties, or a citizen having rights and duties in a particular community. And when you add world in front of citizen, you're saying, well, that community is now global, the whole world. But we're federalist. What is a federalist? What is a federation, really? And that's something that's much more relates to political institutions, how we govern or not a community, or in this case, the world. So it's a little bit harder to maybe understand the concept of world federation versus world citizen. So now I feel it's really my duty as one of my day-to-day jobs, both as president and chief attorney of World Service Authority, but also a board member of Citizens for Global Solutions, to link those two ideas and help people to understand what that really means. But I do get that it can be a little bit intimidating at first to understand that. But I mean, if you look at what's going on, what has happened over the past 30 or so years in the European Union, and how they became a European Union and not just an economic community. And the reasons for that, of course, are really war, which is also the reason why World Service Authority and the World Citizen Government, of which World Service Authority is the administrative branch, why that was founded was because of the war, in this particular case, World War II.
Yeah, I do agree. I personally find the term world federalism to be very academic in relation to world citizenship. So, like, how do you propose we make that a bit more simple and presentable to the public?
Well, I think what you are doing on social media by having these conversations with people to explain their viewpoint of what it is, that helps people when they hear a conversation like this and know, okay, well, yes, it's an ideology or it's a political concept, but it's not. When you explain it and what it means and how you compare it to examples like the European Union, bringing separate states together and having an overarching European Union law, there's not yet a constitution, there will be, I'm sure, one day, or here in the United States, how there is a US Constitution, which is an overarching law that means that people, whether you're in Illinois or whether you're in California or New York, wherever you might find yourself, that there's still a common federal law that says, for example, you can't shoot someone in Illinois and flee to New York. Because the idea that there's a crime called murder that is a federal crime that basically prevents that, or not prevents it, but it outlaws it, and that doesn't exist at the world level. There's no really a world law crime of murder. I mean, yes, that does appear obviously in various treaties or declarations and how that kind of crime might be enacted. But there is not yet a world law that basically outlaws murder, especially if you're wearing a military uniform. You are, in fact, paid to kill. And this is what's really scary with things going on in the world that just so happens right now during our conversation, the events going on in Eastern Europe, for example, where you could see a whole outright war. But if someone's wearing a military uniform, does that mean that they can get away with murder? And over the years, it has meant that. And then, of course, there's the issue of what I would say, or what Gary Davis might say, is the failure of global government or global governance that doesn't really fully exist yet. I mean, the United Nations is not a world government, and there's been close to 250, if not more, wars since the UN was founded in 1945 to rid the world of the scourge of war. So there's a disconnect there, and how we need to have a brain, or the world needs to have a governing structure, which it doesn't yet have. And that's really, of course, what World Federation is about. And I think when we bring that idea down to earth, whether it's talking about an impending war, perhaps, or talking about the pandemic, or other global issues that cannot be handled by one nation or even a few nations by themselves, that idea of having a federation and a common world law. So you cannot, shoot someone on the streets of Baghdad or shoot someone on the streets of New York and get away with it. That should be considered murder everywhere. So if you bring down the idea to the level of someone's everyday understanding, not to talk down to anyone, but to make it understandable in a way that you might understand just law in your local community, I think that's what will help. So what you're doing, what the Young World Federalists are doing, what World Service Authority, of course, is doing, as well as other groups like Citizens for Global Solutions, the World Federalist Movement, et cetera, are all in an effort to bring this idea through education to the public.
Could you tell us a bit about the history, purpose, and the current status of the World Services Authority?
Sure. Well, the reason the organization was founded, were three reasons that provide the history behind it. Gary Davis was a Broadway actor, became famous for standing in for a role for an actor named Danny Kaye. And this is depicted in the film, The World is My Country. So you can go to theworldismycountry.com and see a preview, find out more about that. But he, right at the beginning of World War II, his brother was killed in Salerno on a battleship, which really made him angry. He wanted to bomb Hitler's war factories, sort of in anger, and revenge, vengeful feelings for that. So he enlisted in the Air Corps, the predecessor to the U.S. Air Force. And then, of course, though, when he was up in his bomber plane, dropping bombs, from 19,000 feet in the air on cities like Brandenburg and other cities, he realized, afterwards, when he saw the destruction, that he was killing the same people he would have rather been entertaining as an actor, as a comedian. And these are his fellow humans. How could he have done that? What kind of remorse he had? So that vengeance turned to sadness, which turned to a desire to make a change in the world, make a change in his own life. And then he happened to read a book called Anatomy of Peace by Emery Rebish, which was a bestseller back in 1945. And this book actually challenges all of the isms, meaning like communism, capitalism, socialism, internationalism, religionism, all in favor of creating a world citizen government. I mean, Emery Reeves, Gary would like to always quote Emery Reeves saying, there is no first step to world government. World government is the first step. We just have to claim it. We just have to say this is what we want. You might say it's a social and political choice, but we just have to make that choice if we want to have a peaceful and just world. So it was really his brother's death, his killing that he did in World War II, and having read that book that made him then decide, what can I do to get out of this war system? And then, of course, that film and Gary's book, his memoir, his first book, My Country is the World, which is a quote from Thomas Paine, one of the original founders, I guess you could say, of the United States of America. He tells the story of why he went to Paris to give up his U.S. passport, which you have to do when you renounce or give up your citizenship. And how that whole story played out and what it meant for his life, and the rest of his life, actually his entire adult life, and getting that idea across of what it means to move beyond the nation state, to move beyond the war and the killing that it caused him to do. So it's a great, really powerful, emotional, and engaging story that we are trying to share. World Service Authority is trying to share through that film and through our day-to-day work, through the documents that we issue, registering people as world citizens. I think that probably is enough for me to explain the history of the organization. But there's certain projects that we're working on now that I'm very proud of. For example, our World Court of Human Rights, and I'm the convener of a World Court of Human Rights coalition. We're trying to build organizations, an organizational structure around the world of people who want to have a court of human rights, or a court of human and environmental rights, I would actually say. Because why is it desperately needed? Well, 60% of the world's population lives in a part of the world which doesn't even have a regional human rights system. And you know what that region is, Omkar?
Yeah, I think so. Because
Okay.
yes, you're saying something.
Oh, well, no, I was saying if you knew what that region was, but the answer is Asia. Asia
Yeah.
is the region of the world where more than 60% of the world's population lives. But as you know, there is a court for Europe. There's an African Commission in Court for the many countries in Africa. There's an Inter-American Court. There's even an Arab Charter of Rights. But there is no Asian Human Rights Convention. There's no Asian Commission or court. So that means that if you are say a Rohingya individual and your village is being burned, or you're being persecuted by a government and you have to flee to another country, you can't maybe get any kind of, first of all, redress within that country, but then beyond it, where do you go? There may be nowhere where you could go other than to flee to a different country to find a safe haven or to find justice. So that's the problem. It's such a big problem why we need this World Court of Human Rights. So that's something that we're working on. We're going to be having design team meetings to talk about the statute for the World Court of Human Rights, a statute that was created and got unanimous recognition by all the chief justices of the Supreme Courts of the world in Lucknow, India. That's why it's called the Treaty of Lucknow. But it's just a draft statute for now. But we're hoping to very soon expand that to make it become a real court, hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years. That's one project. Other things that we continue to do on a day-to-day basis is to provide education in forums like this, where we get to talk to the public and to many different people who might see this on YouTube. We talk to hundreds of people every week who call or email asking us questions of what it means to be a world citizen, or what does it mean to carry a document that identifies you as a world citizen, like the World Passport, or the two versions of the World Passport that we offer. So we continue to issue documents of global identification and travel. We have a legal advocacy team and a legal department that provides backup to the documents, to the document holders for those documents in case their document is erroneously rejected. We also have students who work and people who work in our communications department through social media to share this idea of world citizenship and world federation. By the way, also our legal department does provide free advocacy to refugees, for example, people in stateless situations, even if they don't have WSA documents. We do want to help as many people as we can. We do give out a certain number of free or gratis documents to especially refugees and refugee camps who have no way to have funding to apply through the standard fees that normally are requested when someone applies for documents. We also are working in other ways. So we have a World Citizen Clubs, which we are launching on high school and university campuses around the world. So if you or your fellow students are interested in creating a World Citizen Club in your region, please, by all means, get a hold of us. You can email us, and the club website is worldcitizenclub.org. You can find more information there, and we're happy to provide you with more information on how you can do that. And it's a way to engage the passion of young people such as yourself in changing the world and becoming peace builders and peacemakers. Because if you can see yourself as a world citizen and understand that we have rights, you can take on a project in your local community, whether it's cleaning up of a river or stream, whether it's helping people in a refugee situation, whether it's helping some people in your community who happen to be impoverished, or helping people in another part of the world where there's been sadly some kind of devastating event like a hurricane or an earthquake or something, and figuring out how can we help those people in that other part of the world. And you can do that in these clubs, but it's also meant to be a social club too, so that students can get together and have what I might call an international dinner night, where students share food from their particular cultural identity, or maybe a language that they might speak, or maybe you watch a documentary like The World Is My Country at club events. So it's not only to engage in advocacy, but also to engage in fun and interesting activities where you can learn, from your fellow students. So those are some of the things that we're working on right now that I think it's important to share with your audience.
And that's very impressive, and a series of projects very diverse in nature. And I particularly like the world citizen clubs. That idea I like. And apart from that, providing legal assistance to refugees and other people out there who don't have enough resources to afford for legal help in conventional courts. That's really great.
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, I'm so excited about it, and we just need to figure out how, maybe with your help or help of other people in the Global Federal League or with other Federalists, we could advance this, because obviously a world federation is going to require governmental institutions. The main part of a federation, in my mind, is to have the global governmental institutions that will allow human beings to work together peacefully. I mean, WSA's vision is world peace and justice through world citizenship and world law, but our mission is to educate about human rights and environmental rights, world citizenship, world law, and to create the institutions of law that human beings will need to live together peacefully with each other and sustainably with the earth. And to have a human rights court to help us with that, from an American perspective, there's we see government as sort of a tripartite, meaning there are three parts to it. There's the judiciary, which would be what the World Court of Human Rights fits in. There's a legislature, which could be, in the end, a world parliament of the people of the planet, not just of national governments. And then some kind of world executive council that will help to advance and promote and protect rights and the laws that have been created democratically through a world parliament.
So coming to the documents issued by the World Services Authority, how acceptable are they? Like, how many countries recognize them, and how can people apply for the same?
Sure. Well, there's been about 96% of all countries have placed visa, entry, or exit stamps in world passports and world passport holders' passports since 1954. And that comes to almost 190 countries that have stamped it. Now, the only way we know that the passport has been recognized is when passport holders mail their passport back for renewal. We look through, we flip through the passport and we're like, oh, on that visa page, I see there's a stamp. And so we take a scan of that. We might write to or email the individual and ask for more information about how they got that stamp. And then also when passport holders themselves email the copies of the stamps that they get in their travel. So we appreciate when passport holders do that. There are 6 countries that have officially recognized it, which are Burkina Faso, Ecuador, Mauritania, Tanzania, Togo, and Zambia. Like I said, which should most of the time recognize it, but even those countries, any country at any time could reject any passport, actually. No passport in the world, whether it's the Indian passport, the European passport, the American passport, the Chinese passport, whatever, at any point, one official has the power to say yes to someone or no, for a good reason, like maybe someone has harmed somebody, so they want to stop that person from traveling, right? Or for no reason whatsoever, that they're discriminating against that person due to their ethnicity, their religion, their race, their gender, who knows what, right? Or just because the border or immigration official is having a bad day and taking out their anger and frustration on the traveler, right? This happens all the time. And we work with, student can just, maybe you still have an identification document, not even necessarily a passport, but where you can get up and go from New Delhi, for example, and the next day, arrive in Beijing, or the next day arrive in Paris, and maybe just show your ID, but not be rejected just because you're coming from another part of the world. It would be like here for me, if I'm in Washington, D.C., and then I want to go to Virginia, or I want to go to New York or something, I can just take a train or a bus or drive in a car and get there. I don't have to, I might show my driver's license perhaps for some reason, just for identification, but no one's going to stop me, right? Because this is all considered one place. And if our country is the world, then we should be able to travel wherever we want to, whenever we want to, and maybe, like I said, show an ID upon arrival. But that's it, not to be rejected because a government official says, no, I don't like, who you are or what you represent or something, just because they're discriminating in a subjective and oftentimes economically discriminatory way. I mean, for example, for someone to get to the United States from other parts of the world, you have to potentially prove that you have a home, a car, a family, a job, money in your bank account, something that's going to bring you back to that country after you visit as a tourist. Because if you don't have some of those things, you're not going to get a visa. And there are many countries that require other people from other countries to get visas, no matter what passport is, whether it's the world passport or the national one. So for me, I have both a world passport and a US passport. But if I want to go to India, whether it's with my world passport or my US passport, I have to go to a visa service and apply for a visa ahead of time. I cannot just get on a plane and arrive in Mumbai. It's not going to happen. I will be rejected because the airlines will not let me board even if I don't have my visa stamped in my passport. So, all passports are really fantasy documents. Every passport, even the world passport, we might say, is not real. It's a human construct. Gary Davis used to say that all passports, no one should have to ever have a passport. A passport, the world passport is really an anti-passport. We want to get to a situation where no one ever needs a passport, again, to exercise their rights that have been affirmed in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 13, which says everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state, and everyone has the right to leave any country, including one's own, and to return to one's country. If we have those rights, the right to leave and the right to freedom within a country, we should be able to go wherever we want to on planet Earth. In fact, what most people don't know is it really wasn't until after World War I, and even really not until after World War II, that any kind of passport was ever required. In fact, Gary Davis's parents, between World War I and World War II, they traveled all over Europe with no passport. So this is really an invention that's not even really even 100 years old. But people think, oh, I have to have the passport. This is required. Well, it's only required because we say it is. It's like a confidence game, just like any bill, a dollar bill or whatever, a yen or whatever. It's all just a confidence game because it's a human construct that we've created to try to make things maybe function better. But in this 21st century, we know we're all human beings. We've seen the Earth from outer space. We know it's one planet. We know we're all of the same genus and species, right? Why are we fighting each other and not working together?
Just give me a minute. I'll turn the slide on. I'm audible and visible.
Yes.
So you believe that passports, they're just like a temporary requirement currently, and until the time we get rid of documents like passports and visas, until then we need to have a global alternative to national passports.
Well, like I said, I think it's important that someone's identity is not hacked or stolen or tampered with. Obviously, you want to be able to conduct your day-to-day life, at least from a first world perspective, by being able to transact funds, being able perhaps to own property, being able to go and see a doctor or go to school or other things where you might need to show an ID and say, my name's David or my name's Omkaar. I'm not Omkaar, I'm David, right? So we need something. It could be your fingerprint, it could be your retina scan. It doesn't have to be this. And at some point, it's going to be this, right? It's going to be probably on your phone or maybe on your wristwatch. And of course, a lot of people are afraid that it's going to be, like an embedded chip underneath your skin. That scares me too, actually, a little bit. I wouldn't want that. But sooner or later, it's going to, most people, even in remote, small villages and towns around the world, several people have mobile phones, or a lot of people do, right? Even if they don't have a laptop or any kind of computer, they might have a phone, and that phone is really a computer. And that could be enough, and it will be enough for digital identification, digital self-sovereign, you might say, secure identification that we can all rely upon and can use to conduct our day-to-day lives and interact with each other in a safe space. And that's really what we're working on right now, actually, is that kind of thing for multiple purposes, for whether it's for voting or for just to bring the physical document into the digital world. And whether it's using QR codes, whether it's using like a blockchain to make this happen, it's going to happen, and we're in that process too.
That sounds interesting, and this field, it's very exciting. I am also terrified of that chip, the idea of having a chip embedded in the body, but it's fascinating to see how technology is progressing in this regard. Coming up to my follow-up question, how can people get registered for World Passport and other documents?
Yeah, no, thank you. You had asked me that, and I'd forgotten to mention that to apply for Wsa Documents, it's a simple process. You can go to the website, which is World Citizen Gov, World Citizen Gov, like government, worldcitizengov.org. So it's worldcitizengov.org. And on the homepage, there's several different places where you will see the word apply. You just click on apply, we'll take you to a form that's simply online. As long as you have a phone or a laptop or tablet or a computer, you can fill in the information. You can upload your photo, like a selfie, as you stand against a blank wall behind you, a selfie that you've taken. You can upload your fingerprint, or if you have your national passport or other ID, like a birth certificate or driver's license, you can upload that to certify who you are. We have to vet every applicant to make sure that we're not providing documents to someone who is on some kind of restricted list, like someone who might have been a terrorist or is a terrorist, or proven to be someone who might be living in a part of the world where there's some kind of restriction or something. So we do vet everyone who we provide either a legal service or a documentation service to make sure that the people who are getting these documents are knowing that they have to respect other people's rights if they want their rights respected too. So it's a simple process to apply. We encourage people not to just apply for the World Passport, but to also register legally, officially, and politically as a world citizen, which you can also do on the same form, or there's a separate section of the worldcitizengov.org website where you can just apply to register as a world citizen if you want to, where you can just email us the form, or even mail it in if you want to. If you don't want to use a phone or a laptop or something to do that, you could actually post documents to us from almost anywhere in the world to our offices in Washington, D.C. So it's a very simple process. The issuance of the passport is a little time consuming, at least unless someone pays an expedite fee to get it done more quickly, which people can do. So it can be done relatively quickly, actually, but we do charge additional fees to cover those additional costs for quicker service or quicker shipping or other things like that.
That's understandable. And yeah, for the convenience of the viewers, we'll attach all these links in the description so that you can go ahead. And looking forward to having more people register for the World Passport, and looking forward to having one for myself in the near future.
Definitely. That'd be great, Omkar.